Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming back, and let me please first thank Cecilia for organizing this wonderful forum. I think it was a great idea. I think it was really necessary, and I do hope that the discussions which opened here will be continued within ALTE in the future. Today, I would like to talk about how language testing can contribute to the preservation and promotion of less widely used languages, and this way to the promotion and maintaining, hopefully, of language rights. I would like to refer, whenever is possible, to specific groups of speakers and test takers, and those would be the groups of children and young adults. And I will start by showing that from the point of view of language vitality, unfortunately, almost half of the languages in the world are in the position of being endangered and extinct. Endangered meaning exactly this, that the language is not learned, is no longer learned and used by the children. Now, you need to imagine between these two slides a large gap, because there were a lot of slides removed from here. They contain what Laura called them yesterday the depressing statistics. It was exactly this, the depressing statistics. I mean, a lot of data, a lot of information, which actually were meant to illustrate the ideas, the warning signals launched decades ago, and that would be the fact that actually a very large number of languages, minor languages, less widely used languages, are in danger of being replaced, of being pressed a lot by the dominant languages by the end of the 21st century. It is something that we actually see, unfortunately, happening nowadays. And we need to see how language testing, or if language testing can contribute to, I don't know, maybe not stopping, but at least changing a bit the situation in this respect. And when it comes to language rights, I need to start by pointing out to a really significant collection of documents, first of all, coming from important European institutions like the Council of Europe, like institutions of the European Parliament, but also from a lot of organizations which have at the core of their preoccupation the interest for the preservation and for promotion of little used languages, like, for example, documents like the Girona Manifesto on Linguistic Rights or the Donostia Protocol and so on. Now, when it comes to documents which are closer to our domain of work and activity, we need to also point to the fact that the Common European Framework of Reference already mentioned the need to further develop the richness and diversity of European cultural life through greater mutual knowledge of national and regional languages, including those less widely taught, following a recommendation of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. However, the same documents that we mentioned before do not hesitate to show the fact that between these principles and recommendations for implementation of language rights, actually, and the implementation of the language rights in practice, a lot of significant steps still need to be taken. And yes, there are good examples. There are examples of good practice coming, for example, from the UK or from Spain, where regional and minority languages, some of them at least, might be in a better position. However, the same document point to the fact that actually the rich linguistic and cultural heritage benefit of a great deal of support at the level of rhetoric. However, this is not quite so obvious in terms of practical application. Now, Europe only hosts 4% of the languages of the world, and indeed we do not seem to be doing the best of jobs in preserving and protecting these languages. Also, what needs to be mentioned when it comes to language rights and language diversity is the fact that we need to make the difference between multilingualism and linguistic diversity. And the same documents that I was talking about before, like, for example, endangered languages and linguistic diversity in the European Union, mentioned the fact that language learning policies has tended to be influenced by harder priorities like economic competitiveness and labor market mobility. Linguistic diversity policies, on the other hand, were informed by softer issues like inclusion and human rights. Multilingualism policy, the document shows, has been more highly prioritized than linguistic diversity policy in terms of concrete actions. Now, when it comes to solutions, of course, we propose language tests as possible helpers in keeping the diversity of languages around the world and in Europe, because this is the context closest to us. Now, people would ask how another test or other tests could help in this respect. However, what I need to specify is that in this rhetoric question, the key word is actually another. What I mean here is that what I consider that we should do is maybe try to diversify a bit the landscape of language testing, because now it's not, we could not say it's monochrome, but there is a lot of testing in the very important languages, very largely used languages around the world. And I think that we should add to this tests, promote tests in less widely used languages. Because this is actually, we know that actually language testing is an instrument of empowerment. And we need to realize that through the tests the tests are actually something that we use in order to create a linguistic context for the children and for the young adults. So if we remain in this area, as I said, of largely used languages in the domain of language testing, what we do is to give the impression, to transmit the idea that actually these are the languages that matter. And we need to diversify this landscape, as I said, because in this way they will see that the other languages could also be of interest and use for them. Now, what I would like to move on is an idea which is pointed out by researchers like François Green. And this means that actually I would like to make a step out of the bubble somehow, right? Because for us, people working with languages, people who are here, people who teach, assess, it's really no need of any other arguments for this. For us, the scientific grounds, the moral grounds that support language diversity and language rights are quite enough. However, we need to look at other perspectives and to see if actually we can also address these kind of objections that might come towards the policy of language protection and promotion. And I refer to this study by François Green, published in 2005, in which he said that the linguistic human rights perspective, so relevant, he says, to the protection and promotion of minority languages, or more generally to linguistic diversity, displays one major weakness, he says, and that would be the fact that it almost exclusively rely on moral considerations. As I said, for us, this would not be a weakness, an issue. But let's see if we can address the type of objections that François Green talks about in his study. And this kind of objections are actually the ones related to feasibility, costs, and burden sharing. Now, my first question here would be if it is worth learning languages, and more than that, less widely spoken languages. And I will give here only one example, a study coming from Poland, which was developed by Jacek Lewiński in 2018. Lewiński is not a linguist, right? He's an economist, but he was really interested in the labor market and in the degree in which learning languages and mastering languages in foreign languages can influence earnings. He came to these conclusions that actually there are reasons why proficiency in foreign languages should influence earnings, and this would be, for example, that foreign language skills can have a positive impact on productivity. The use of foreign languages improve cognitive skills, he says, he noticed, and also that the command of a foreign language is or should be a signal to the employers of greater abilities and cognitive skills of the employees. Now, when it comes to more concrete data coming from the same study I was talking about, Lewiński looks exactly at the wage premium which from an advanced command of languages for different employees in this context, as I said, in Poland. And he sees that actually for English, that would be somewhere around 8%. For command of German, somewhere around 5%. What's interesting is another set of languages that he studied from this point of view of the relation with the labor market, and that would and that led him to the conclusions that actually advanced command in Spanish brought wage premium actually to 29%, and for Italian that was 20%, and for French that was 19%. So actually it shows that besides the really important and really largely spoken and used languages, the ones which are maybe not so widely used can be of real importance, even from this point of view of the connection with the labor market. Of course, it would be really interesting to see where this percentage would get when the study would be continued to take into considerations other languages, even less widely used than the ones shown on the screen. Now, in those objections that Green mentioned in his study, he also referred to the linguistic democracy, to the distributive justice. And here he says that, okay, what does this mean? Authorities might actually decide that protection and promotion of minority languages is morally justified, is technically feasible, is a wise allocation of scarce resources and even beneficial to society as a whole. Still, he says, the matter of distributive justice or burden sharing needs to be addressed. And this means that some members of that community, for example, when we talk about a community speaking a minority language, which the authorities would like to promote. So some members of this community might think that actually those resources could be better spent for other needs of the community. And a concrete example comes actually from a study conducted by Miller in 2011, who analyzed the possibilities of promoting Scottish and of investing in teaching it and testing it and using it actually more widely. And the conclusion of the study was rather in a pessimistic note, because he said, okay, even if we could convince the local authorities that this is important, it's necessary, a part of the Scottish population actually would be at best indifferent towards the new situation, if not contesting the investment of resourcing in such a language policy. What I mean with this example is actually the fact that I think that when you choose to take a test in a less widely spoken language, this is no pressure actually on the community, on resources and anything else. This is an individual decision, which however might determine other people to do this, and this could lead to teaching more the language and of course to using more the language. Now, in the last part of my presentation, I would like to look at some examples to see if actually this is really feasible, doable, if examples of creating the possibility of teaching and testing in less widely spoken, taught and tested languages is feasible. This morning, I assisted in a presentation of some representatives from the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages in the United States. And they were speaking about the current phase of revising their assessment instruments actually for various languages. What I wanted to do here was to go back to this point in time, to the 80s, when they actually started developing a very large variety and a very good set of assessment instruments. And they started actually with projects in commonly taught languages to move on into a further step to projects in less commonly taught languages. And the third step of this project was actually projects in much less commonly taught languages. So a really important step which helped, as studies show, which helped teaching more less commonly used languages in the United States. Also, a very important list of assessment instruments can be seen in Janus in 1998, and as I said, a project which continues empowering the teachers and the language assessors who teach in the United States languages which are less used. Another example comes also from the United States, and it refers to this initiative which is called Course Share Initiative, where more universities put their forces together and offered courses in less widely taught languages in order to attract more students who might participate in these courses. Of course, this led to better resources in the creation of more resources for teaching and also for assessment. It's a project which continues actually with consequences at all levels: teaching, teacher collaboration, teaching and testing actually. Now, a very interesting example that I found comes from the University of Latvia with this, from the Livonian Institute, with this project of, it's a postdoctoral project of applying the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages to Livonian, which is an almost extinct language. And this project is considered a new opportunity for endangered languages. I will conclude with the last example that I want to give here, that of the Zhuang language proficiency test, the first minority language test in China issued in 2012. And actually, I was glad to see that in the program of this conference, there is a presentation dedicated to this test. I will stop here. The goals of this exam are really significant, and it's nice to see that they are preoccupied with this. I will stop here with the idea that actually I consider that language testing can contribute to the promotion and preservation of less used languages, and through this to the implementation of language rights. Thank you so much. Thank you.